Lucas, a 34-year-old man with a steady job and a 7-year marriage to Sophia, had always thought his life was predictable, maybe even a little boring. 7 years with Sophia had settled into a comfortable rhythm: work, home, and raising their 6-year-old son, Oliver. Sure, there were the usual hiccups, missed date nights, the occasional argument over who forgot to unload the dishwasher, but nothing that hinted at the storm about to hit him. It was a Tuesday, just another gray day at the office, when Lucas decided to call Sophia during his lunch break. He leaned back in his creaky desk chair, phone pressed to his ear, thinking about whether they should order pizza or attempt that chicken recipe Sophia had been nagging him to try. The call rang once, twice, then cut off abruptly. Weird, he thought, frowning. Sophia wasn't usually one to dodge him. He dialed again, figuring she might have been distracted. This time the line clicked on, but there was no hello. Instead, he heard the faint clatter of dishes and muffled voices, Sophia's voice, unmistakable, followed by a sharp laugh he vaguely recognized as her friend Harper's. Lucas opened his mouth to say something but stopped. Something felt off. Sophia hadn't realized the call had connected. He could hear her clear as day, chatting away at what sounded like a cafe, oblivious to him listening in. He almost hung up. Almost. But then Harper's voice cut through, loud and gleeful. His son isn't even his. A DNA test would destroy him. The words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. His sandwich dropped onto his desk, forgotten. His heart thudded as Sophia giggled, and responded, "Oh, Harper, you should have seen how easy it was. 6 years ago, at that Boston conference, Nathan, my boss, God, he was such a charmer. One thing led to another, and, well, oops." Lucas froze, his breath shallow. Nathan. The name rang a bell. Sophia's old boss, the slick guy with the corner office she'd worked for before switching jobs. She'd always brushed off questions about those work trips with a smile and a vague, just boring meetings. Apparently not. Sophia kept going, her tone light, like she was gossiping about a TV show. Nathan didn't want anything to do with it when I told him I was pregnant. Said it wasn't his problem, so I thought, why ruin a good thing? Lucas was so excited when I told him we were having a baby. He never suspected a thing. Harper cackled. You're evil, Sophia, pure evil. Oh, come on, Sophia said, her voice dripping with mock offense. He's so guileless. Thinks Oliver's his little mini-me. I mean, the kid's got Nathan's eyes, but Lucas? Clueless. It's almost cute. Lucas's blood boiled. His hand shook as he gripped the phone, the cafe chatter fading into a dull roar in his ears. Oliver, his Oliver, with his messy brown hair and that goofy grin Lucas swore he'd passed down, wasn't his. 6 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, and, Daddy, look at my drawing. All built on a lie. Sophia's lie, and she was laughing about it. He wanted to scream, to smash the phone, to march to that cafe and confront her right then and there. But something stopped him, a cold, sharp clarity cutting through the rage. If he reacted now, he'd lose everything in the chaos. Sophia didn't know he'd heard. He still had the upper hand, however shaky it felt. Lucas ended the call silently, staring at the screen as it went dark. His untouched sandwich sat there, mocking him with its normalcy. He wasn't hungry anymore. He wasn't sure he'd ever be hungry again, but one thing was certain. His life, as he'd known it, was over. What came next, he didn't know, but he wasn't about to let Sophia's smug little game go unanswered. Lucas's world had cracked wide open, and the pieces were still falling. After hanging up that fateful call, he sat at his desk for a full 10 minutes, staring blankly at the wall, his mind a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. Finally, he grabbed his jacket, mumbled something to his boss about feeling sick, and bolted. He didn't care if it looked suspicious, he just needed out. For 2 hours he drove aimlessly through the city, the hum of the engine doing little to drown out the chaos in his head. Sophia's laugh echoed in his ears, Harper's words, his son isn't even his, stabbing at him over and over. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to turn the car around and storm home. But no, he couldn't let her see him unravel. Not yet. Eventually, he pulled into a gas station parking lot and dialed Caleb, an old high school buddy who'd gone on to become a lawyer. "Man, I need help," Lucas said, voice hoarse. "Something big. Can you recommend someone?" Caleb didn't pry. Bless him. And within an hour, Lucas was sitting across from a sharp-eyed family law attorney named Diane, spilling the whole ugly story in her cluttered office. Diane leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her desk. "Here's the deal, Lucas. Our state's a no-fault divorce jurisdiction. Her cheating won't automatically sway custody or alimony. But," she added, raising an eyebrow, "proof of infidelity can nudge things like property division in your favor. You've got a solid case if you play it smart. Start gathering evidence. Protect yourself." That meeting lit a fire under him. Lucas wasn't just hurt, he was done. He opened a new bank account that afternoon, quietly transferring small amounts from their joint savings. Nothing Sophia would notice, but enough to give him a cushion. Back home, he dug through files in the garage, making copies of tax returns, mortgage statements, anything he could get his hands on. He even snapped photos of Sophia's jewelry and the antique clock her grandmother had left her, just in case she tried to claim they'd gone missing in the split. One evening, when Sophie went out to chat with a neighbor, Lucas couldn't resist. He grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. She'd gotten lazy with her passcode and scrolled through her cloud storage. His stomach churned as he found what he was dreading. Photos from 6 years back, geotagged at a swanky Boston hotel. Sophia and Nathan, grinning in fluffy bathrobes, clinking champagne flutes. She looked radiant, carefree, like she hadn't just torched their marriage. Lucas stared at Nathan's smug face, his dark eyes mocking him through the screen. Oliver's eyes, he realized, and nearly dropped the phone. That was the push he needed. The next day, he ordered a discreet DNA test online, swiping Oliver's toothbrush while the boy was at school. He felt like a thief in his own home, but what choice did he have? That evening, he plastered on a smile, chopping vegetables for dinner while Sophia chattered about her day. "You're so good at this," she teased, nudging him as he diced onions. He forced a laugh, the knife trembling slightly in his hand. Later, he sat with Oliver at the kitchen table, helping with math homework, simple addition that suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "You're the best, Dad," Oliver said, grinning up at him. Lucas's chest tightened. He wanted to believe it didn't matter, that love was enough. But the truth gnawed at him. Every morning, driving Oliver to school, Lucas stole glances in the rearview mirror. The boy's sharp cheekbones, his dark lashes. How had he missed it? He'd spent 6 years seeing himself in Oliver, proud of every little resemblance. Now it was like staring at a stranger's kid. He loved him. God, he loved him. But the betrayal was a knife twisting deeper every day. Lucas didn't just want out. He wanted Sophia to feel it. Their anniversary was 2 weeks away, and she'd been dropping hints about a fancy restaurant she'd been dying to try. Perfect. He'd play along, book the table, order her favorite wine. And then, over dessert, he'd slide the DNA results across the table like a gift-wrapped bomb. Let her squirm. Let her see the guileless husband she'd mocked turn the tables. He could already picture her face, shock, then panic. And for the first time since that phone call, a grim smile tugged at his lips. Revenge wasn't pretty, but it sure felt good to plan. The DNA test results arrived in a plain envelope, slipped into Lucas's mailbox like a quiet grenade. He didn't open it right away. Couldn't. He just stared at it on the kitchen counter for an hour, the weight of what he already knew pressing down on him. When he finally tore it open, the cold, clinical words confirmed it. He wasn't Oliver's biological father. Something inside him shattered, a brittle hope he'd been clinging to without realizing it. But instead of breaking down, he channeled it, every ounce of pain and fury, into the plan. In the days leading up to their anniversary, Lucas moved like a man possessed. He met Caleb at a diner, hunched over coffee and divorce papers, finalizing every detail. "You sure about this, man?" Caleb asked, sliding the stack across the table. Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. Never been surer. He drained the last of their joint savings into his new account, changed every password he could think of, email, bank apps, even the Netflix account Sophia hogged. He thought about tracking down Nathan, picturing himself slamming the guy against a wall and demanding answers. But no, Nathan could wait. This was Sophia's reckoning first. Saturday rolled around, their 7th anniversary. Sophia was all smiles that morning, buzzing with excitement about their reservation at La Dolce Vita, the upscale Italian place she'd been raving about for months. Lucas played along, nodding as she gushed about the menu, even tossing in a casual, "You deserve it, babe." Inside, he was a coiled spring. He slipped the DNA results and copies of those damning hotel photos into a glittery anniversary card, red, her favorite color, and sealed it with a steady hand. At the restaurant, Sophia looked like a queen in her red dress, her laughter filling the candlelit room as she sipped her Chianti. "This is perfect," she sighed, twirling her fork in her pasta. Lucas forced a smile, his stomach churning, and slid the card across the table. "Happy anniversary," he said, voice flat. She beamed, tearing it open, expecting some sappy note. Then her face changed. The color drained from her cheeks as she scanned the DNA report, her eyes darting to the photos, her and Nathan, champagne flutes raised, undeniable. "Lucas, what is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "You tell me," he said, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. She tried to laugh it off, a weak, nervous sound. "This is ridiculous. Where did you even—" But then her defenses kicked in, and she flipped the script. "You had no right," she snapped, her voice rising. "You had no right to do a DNA test behind my back. You didn't have my permission to invade my privacy like this." Heads turned at nearby tables, forks pausing mid-bite. Lucas didn't flinch. "I heard you, Sophia. That day on the phone with Harper, laughing about how guileless I am. How Oliver's not mine. I didn't go looking for this. You handed it to me." His tone was ice, every word deliberate. "And I've got every right to protect myself from your lies." Her mouth opened, then closed. The fight drained out of her, replaced by panic. "Lucas, please," she whispered, tears welling up. "We can talk about this. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." When he didn't budge, she switched gears again, slamming the card on the table. "You're ruining everything. You're throwing away our family." "No," he said, standing up, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "You did that 6 years ago. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Divorce papers are ready. Enjoy your dinner." He tossed his napkin on the table and walked away. Sophia's composure cracked. "Lucas, wait!" she cried, her voice breaking into a sob. She stood, knocking over her wine glass, the red liquid pooling like blood on the white tablecloth. "Please, don't do this." Diners stared, whispering as she begged, mascara streaking down her face. But Lucas kept walking, out the door, into the cool night air, his heart pounding but his resolve unbroken. His phone buzzed relentlessly as he drove home. 10, 15, 20 calls from Sophia, voicemails piling up. He didn't listen to a single one. He'd crash at Caleb's for a few days, grab his things later when she wasn't around. The restaurant scene replayed in his mind. Her shock, her tears. And for a fleeting moment, he almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then he remembered Oliver's toothbrush, those hotel photos, and the pity burned away. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for tonight, he'd won. The aftermath of that anniversary dinner hit Sophia like a freight train, and it didn't stop there. Someone at La Dolce Vita had their phone out, capturing every second of her meltdown, the spilled wine, the mascara-streaked pleas, the shrill, "Lucas, don't do this." By Sunday morning, the clip was blowing up on TikTok, racking up millions of views under captions like "Karma's a pasta dish" and "When your lies catch up." Sophia's humiliation went viral, and there was no escaping it. Lucas didn't waste time. Monday morning he filed for divorce, and by midday a process server handed Sophia the papers at her office. She didn't take it quietly. Colleagues later told him she'd shrieked, flung the envelope across the room, and collapsed into a sobbing heap by the copier. Her boss, already on edge from the TikTok fiasco, called it the last straw. "We can't have this kind of drama," he said, and fired her on the spot. The company wanted no part of the mess she'd become. Word spread fast, and their mutual friends were left reeling. Texts pinged Lucas's phone nonstop, a mix of, "What the hell happened?" and "Is this for real?" He didn't reply. He was done explaining. Needing space, Lucas crashed at his friend Mason's place, a cozy bachelor pad with a lumpy couch and a fridge full of beer. It wasn't much, but it was a lifeline while he hunted for something permanent. Within a week, he found a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, just a fresh start. He was signing the lease when his phone rang. Oliver's name flashed on the screen, and Lucas's stomach dropped. The kid never called him directly. "Dad?" Oliver's voice was small, shaky. "Something's wrong with Mom. She's weird. She's sleeping all the time, and there's bottles everywhere." Lucas's first instinct was to brush it off. Sophia wasn't his problem anymore. But then he pictured Oliver, alone in that house, confused and scared, and his resolve cracked. "Hang tight, buddy," he said. "I'm coming." When Lucas got to the house, it was worse than he'd imagined. Sophia was sprawled on the couch, surrounded by empty wine bottles and takeout containers, her eyes glassy and unfocused. She barely registered him. "What are you doing here?" she slurred, waving a hand dismissively. Oliver hovered in the doorway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his little face pale. Lucas didn't argue. He grabbed his remaining boxes, then turned to Oliver. "Pack a bag. You're staying with me." Sophia mumbled something incoherent, but she didn't fight it. She was too far gone. The divorce proceedings were a grim affair. Sophia showed up to court looking like a ghost, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, a shadow of the radiant woman in the red dress. She didn't contest much. She just sat there, staring blankly as the judge divvied up their life. Lucas kept the car and his retirement savings while the house went up for sale. Neither of them could afford it solo. It was a clean break, except for one glaring loose end. Oliver. Sophia's downward spiral wasn't slowing. The drinking, the depression, it was clear she couldn't care for herself, let alone a 6-year-old. Lucas saw the writing on the wall. Her parental rights were on borrowed time. But he wasn't ready to rip Oliver away from her completely. Not yet. In court, he asked for a delay on the custody hearing. "Give it a few weeks," he told the judge, his voice steady but his chest tight. "Let's see if she can pull herself together." The judge agreed, setting a follow-up date. But Lucas wasn't holding his breath. Back at the apartment, Oliver settled in, his dinosaur perched on the spare bed. "Is Mom going to be okay?" he asked one night, his dark eyes, Nathan's eyes, searching Lucas's face. Lucas forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "She's working on it, kiddo. But you've got me, no matter what." It was true. Biology or not, Oliver was his son in every way that mattered. Sophia's mess couldn't change that. Still, as he watched the boy drift off to sleep, Lucas wondered how long he could keep shielding him from the wreckage she'd left behind. Lucas couldn't let it go. Not entirely. Nathan had been a ghost hovering over his life for too long, and after settling into his new routine with Oliver, he decided it was time to face the man who'd helped blow everything apart. Tracking him down wasn't hard. Nathan still worked at the same firm Sophia had left years ago, his smug LinkedIn headshot practically daring Lucas to show up. So he did, requesting a meeting under the pretense of clearing the air. They met at a sterile coffee shop downtown, Nathan sauntering in with the same slick confidence Lucas remembered from those hotel photos. "Look, man," Nathan started, barely glancing up from his latte. "I get it, you're pissed, but I didn't sign up for any of this." Lucas clenched his jaw, leaning forward. "You slept with my wife, got her pregnant, and bailed. You don't get to play innocent here. This mess, it's on you as much as her." His voice was low, controlled, but the fury simmered just beneath. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his perfectly gelled hair. I didn't know she'd keep it, okay? When she told me, I said it was her call. I'm not father material, never was. I feel bad about how it turned out, but I'm not taking on a kid I didn't want. That was when Lucas decided to push harder. He'd brought Oliver along not to force a bond, but to make Nathan see. The boy sat at a nearby table, coloring a dinosaur book, oblivious to the tension. Lucas nodded toward him. That's him, your son, 6 years old, smart as hell, and you've never even met him. Nathan glanced over, his expression blank. Oliver looked up briefly, gave a shy wave, then went back to his crayons. Nathan shrugged. Cute kid, but I don't feel anything, man. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Oliver didn't seem fazed either, too absorbed in his drawing to care. Lucas's stomach twisted. He'd hoped for something. A spark, maybe. But there was nothing. Driving home, Oliver chattered about school, and Lucas realized the truth. Nathan might have made Oliver, but he'd never be his dad. That role was Lucas's, blood or not. He couldn't let the boy grow up abandoned, an orphan in all but name, while Sophia spiraled and Nathan washed his hands of it. Oliver deserved better. The custody hearing loomed, and Lucas made a choice that felt both reckless and right. He stood before the judge, heart pounding, and requested full custody. Sophia's unfit, he said, voice steady despite the weight of it. She's drowning in booze and depression, Oliver's suffering for it, and his biological father wants nothing to do with him. I've raised him. I'm his dad. I'm asking to keep it that way. His conscience wouldn't let him walk away, not from the boy who still called him Dad every night. The judge granted it. Sophia didn't show up to contest. She'd stopped fighting weeks ago. Lucas walked out of the courthouse with Oliver's hand in his, a legal victory that felt more like a lifeline. But he wasn't done with Nathan. Later that week, he cornered him again, this time with leverage. Your wife, Lucas said, leaning against Nathan's sleek SUV in the parking lot. She doesn't know, does she? About Sophia? About Oliver? I've got photos, dates, proof. How do you think she'd take it? Nathan's cool facade cracked. You wouldn't. Try me, Lucas replied, eyes hard. Or we can settle this quietly. You pay child support. Nothing crazy, just enough to help him out. 5 years, then you're free. Nathan swore under his breath but caved. They met with a lawyer the next day, drafting an agreement, monthly payments, no fuss, no contact. Nathan signed it with a scowl, muttering about blackmail, but Lucas didn't care. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about Oliver's future. 5 years of support would give them breathing room, and that was enough. Back at the apartment, Oliver bounced on the couch, grinning about some cartoon. Lucas watched him, the knot in his chest loosening just a little. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was theirs now, his and Oliver's, and he'd fight to make it work. With the divorce and custody battles behind them, Sophia's life took a sharp turn downward. She moved into a cramped, dingy apartment on the edge of town, the kind with flickering hallway lights and neighbors who didn't ask questions. She landed a low-paying job at a call center, but it didn't last long. Her temper flared too often, snapping at customers and showing up late with bloodshot eyes. The drinking hadn't stopped. If anything, it got worse, a bottle always within reach to numb the depression that clung to her like a shadow. She had no family to lean on, no parents, no siblings, just a void where support should have been. Some of their old mutual friends couldn't watch her self-destruct any longer. After a particularly rough night when Sophia drunk-dialed half her contacts, a small group staged an intervention. You're killing yourself, Soph, one of them said, tears in their eyes, as they hauled her to a rehab center an hour outside the city. She fought at first, cursing, clawing at the car door, but exhaustion won out. The friends paid for the first month, hoping it'd stick, though no one was naive enough to call it a sure thing. Meanwhile, Lucas threw himself into building a stable life for Oliver. Every morning he drove the boy to school, chatting about dinosaurs or soccer to keep things light, but the truth couldn't stay buried forever. One quiet evening, Oliver asked, "Why doesn't Mom want me anymore?" Lucas's throat tightened. He sat the boy down, choosing his words carefully. "She's sick, buddy, not your fault. And I'm not your biological dad, but I'm your dad in every way that counts. Always will be." Oliver's eyes welled up, and he didn't say much after, but the questions lingered in his silence. Therapy helped. Slowly. The counselor said it'd take time, and Lucas was patient, even when Oliver's mood swung from clingy to distant. Their little apartment started feeling like home. Lucas hung Oliver's drawings on the fridge and bought a scruffy mutt named Rex from a shelter, a gangly, floppy-eared dog that Oliver adored instantly. Rex bounded around, chewing socks and licking faces, bringing a chaotic kind of joy they both needed. Work picked up, too. Lucas snagged a small promotion, enough to cover the bills and stash a little extra for emergencies. Life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. Then came Lily. Lucas met her by chance at a school event. Oliver's class had a science fair, and Lily's daughter, Ashley, was showing off a volcano that actually erupted. Lily, a single mom with warm brown eyes and a quick laugh, struck up a conversation while their kids bonded over baking soda and vinegar. She was easy to talk to, grounded in a way Sophia never had been. They started dating, slow and simple, coffee runs, park play dates with the kids. Ashley, a sweet, bubbly 8-year-old, clicked with Oliver right away, and soon the four of them were a unit. Lily got Lucas's dry humor, and she didn't flinch when he opened up about the past. "You're a good dad," she told him once, squeezing his hand. "That's what matters." Lucas joined a support group for single dads too, a ragtag bunch who met weekly to vent and swap advice. It was strange at first, spilling his guts to strangers, but it helped. He wasn't alone in the mess of raising a kid solo, and the guys cheered him on when he mentioned Lily. "She's a keeper," one said, clapping him on the back. Lucas grinned. He thought so too. Nights at the apartment grew livelier. Oliver and Ashley chased Rex around while Lucas and Lily cooked dinner, trading stories over spaghetti and garlic bread. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a flicker of something solid. Hope, maybe. He wasn't just patching up the cracks anymore. He was building something new. A family, not the one he'd lost, but one he'd chosen. As he watched Oliver laugh, Rex barking at his heels, Lucas knew he'd do whatever it took to make it last. Months slipped by, and just as Lucas was settling into his new rhythm, Sophia reappeared. She showed up unannounced one Saturday, standing on his doorstep with a nervous smile and a sober clarity in her eyes. "I've been through treatment," she said, hands fidgeting. "I'm better now. I want to make things right." Lucas didn't let her in, not fully. He kept it polite but firm, a wall up for his own sake and Oliver's. "I'm glad you're doing better, Sophia," he told her, "but we're not going back. Let's just keep this civil for Oliver." She nodded, accepting it, and dropped a bombshell. She was moving to a new city a few hours away for a fresh start and a decent job at a small accounting firm. "I'd like to see Oliver sometimes," she added softly, "if you're okay with bringing him to visit." Lucas agreed, cautious but willing, for Oliver's sake, not hers. Oliver's birthday rolled around, and Lucas threw a party at the apartment. Balloons bobbed in the corners, Rex darted underfoot, and the kids, Oliver, Ashley, and a few school friends, ran wild with laughter. He invited Sophia, figuring it was the right thing to do. She arrived with a wrapped dinosaur Lego set, looking nervous but composed. To everyone's surprise, the day went smoothly. Oliver lit up when he saw her. Though there was a shy distance in his hug, he'd grown used to her absence. Sophia kept it together, chatting lightly with Lily and thanking Lucas quietly for including her. Lily, ever the steady hand, hovered nearby, smoothing over any awkward silences with her warmth. "You're doing great," she whispered to Lucas later, squeezing his arm. He shot her a grateful look, then caught Sophia's eye and gave her a small nod. "Thanks for being decent today," he said. She smiled faintly. Progress, not perfection. Later, as the party wound down and the kids sprawled on the couch with pizza crumbs on their shirts, Lucas found himself reflecting. The anger still flared sometimes, a dull ember in his chest when he remembered Sophia's lies. But mostly, he felt relief. Clean, honest relief. He traded chaos for something real, and it fit him better than the old life ever had. One night, while he and Oliver kneaded dough for homemade pizza, the boy piped up out of nowhere. "I'm glad we live here, Dad," he said, flour dusting his nose. "I like Lily and Ashley. Back at the old house, Mom was always mad at you. I miss her sometimes, but I hope we can see her more." Lucas paused, the dough soft under his hands, and looked at his son, really looked. Those words, simple and unguarded, hit him hard. They were proof he'd made the right call, cutting through the wreckage to give Oliver a shot at something stable. "We'll make it work, bud," he said, voice thick. "She's still your mom." Sophia kept her word, slowly rebuilding herself. Lucas drove Oliver to see her every couple of months, awkward trips at first, but they softened over time. She'd gotten a little place with a spare room for Oliver, and she'd ask about his school, his drawings, listening more than she used to. Lucas watched her change, surprised but not softened. He'd let her be part of Oliver's life, but the trust was gone for good. One evening, after tucking Oliver in and settling on the couch with Lily, Lucas felt it. A quiet, steady peace. Rex snored at his feet, Ashley's giggles echoed from a sleepover down the hall, and Lily leaned into him, her presence a comfort he hadn't known he'd needed. He thought about Oliver, about the choice to stick by him despite the DNA, and realized it wasn't just duty. It was love, plain and simple. He'd stayed, fought, built something new. The nightmare had turned into a life he could be proud of. Sometimes, he mused, the hardest decisions carve out the best paths. The past was a shadow, but the future glowed bright. A family, a home, a second chance he'd earned. And as Lily laced her fingers through his, he knew he was ready to keep moving forward. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.